In this episode of the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I discovered that the Mary Poppins song Spoonful of Sugar Helps the Medicine Go Down is part of a corporate conspiracy as we discuss the 2014 documentary Fed Up. Man, I forgot what the documentary is called for a second. That was like the key thing, and I forgot it. Welcome to the show. I'm PT.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you guys can join us. Glad to be back.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome back. Glad to have you back, Jonathan. Um,
Thank you.
Thanks again to Pipes for joining in last week. That was a lot of fun. Although I will say that I could see you much more clearly. Like you said, you listened. Did you check
I
it out on YouTube or not?
I didn't. I wanted to because I could hear you mentioning him being in a bunker, which I assume was a reference to like poor visual quality of some sort or another. But I didn't. I got it off iTunes, so
All
I
right.
was only able to hear it and not see it.
Nice, nice.
So
Yeah. Just imagine, like he was in his basement where there's like one like hanging light bulb that was like really far
okay,
away. So it's
gotcha.
like there was like a faint blue glow, and like kind of see
Well,
the shape of him.
it was perfect for Countdown to Zero.
I
So
guess so. Did you watch that documentary? Any thoughts you want to throw in on
I did
that
watch
before we go?
did watch the documentary. Trying to think, it caught me a little off guard there. I did watch Countdown to Zero, so I could you know get you guys when you're talking about it in the podcast. It was one of those documentaries where I was like, man, there's only so many things I can be afraid of in life, and I don't think I have room for nuclear annihilation. Like my biggest thought on it was like the big thing in that documentary that like struck me hard was the whole probability calculator, which I totally get. Like I have a degree in mathematics, and math is kind of a like thing. I always think in mathematical terms, and it was like, oh yeah, the probability of something, no matter how unlikely, over a long enough timeline becomes, imminent. And I
Right.
was like, oh yeah, so I guess if we have a ton of nuclear weapons, eventually something bad will happen. Maybe we should get rid of nuclear weapons. That seems like a really good idea for planet Earth. Seems a little unrealistic, but
Right. All right, cool. Well, good deal. So from one upsetting topic to the next, let's talk about Fed Up. Jonathan, tell us what
ooh,
this bad boy is about.
okay. Fed Up is a documentary that kind of explores where our obesity epidemic is coming from in America and basically tries to point the finger and say, hey, we need some government regulations to help curb a systemic problem in our society that is the real problem with obesity and health issues that are related to it in the United States. It's pretty one-sided, but it does tackle it, and it's pretty persuasive in its evidence, in my opinion.
Cool. All right. Did you like it?
I did like this documentary, very much. That I had some issues with it, and there were a lot of things that I was like, I didn't like buy it hook, line, and sinker, but I did buy it. It had a lot of, I thought, valid points. And you,
Cool.
were you?
Yeah, I liked it more than I thought I would. If I had to put it on a scale, I'd say it's like a slightly above average documentary. Like it was pretty good. Um, the the reason I was like a little hesitant about it was twofold, really. And one is like I'm a little burnt out on documentaries about food stuff. Like there's a million of them out there, and a little burnt out on them. And then also I'm a little burnt out on like I kind of realized that first of all, like all of my favorite documentaries that we've done on this podcast are like the non-issue documentaries. They're like the personal story kind of documentaries, like your Muscle Shoals and your indie games and your life itself, and the ones that are more about like a person's story rather than an issue. So and kind of like you alluded to with Countdown to Zero, like man, every one of these documentaries about an issue is basically the same, except just switching out the issue. It's pretty much the same like formula that they always use, just switching out the facts and the people talking and what the issue is. So I was a little like I was a little not super psyched about it going in, but I definitely, I would say I was pleasantly surprised by it and I liked it. So yeah.
Yeah, they did do, at least in this one, they did tie in a little personal journey for you through it. They follow three, well, I guess four by the end, different children who have obesity issues, and they're, that was one of the things I thought. Some of the kids, I think the one was Brody, I think was his name. it said some really profound things, which I thought was just really interesting as a young kid that's, just kind of talking into his little, you know, at home, whatever self footage thing for the documentary or whatever. But he said some really profound things, and all of them really said some touching things as well. And really, they were part of the things that brought a whole nother aspect to it to light, which is like education in nutrition. I mean,
Right.
like I was shocked at like, some of these families are like, yeah, we're really trying to eat healthy. Where, this kid's been doing really well in his diet and health. He's eating the lean hot pockets. He's eating, the
Right.
Cheez-Its with 3% less sodium. And I was like, holy crap. I mean, that stuff is horrible for you. That is not good nutrition at all. That's like, and they were honestly like, oh yeah, we're doing it right. Oh yeah, we're eating cereal every meal or whatever. It's like,
Right. Yeah, no, that's a yeah, that's a interesting point. Yeah, I think that's definitely a real thing that like people who want to get healthy, a lot of people just don't know how, don't really know how to get healthy. Um, in regards to those like little stories or whatever, here's a new thing I want to throw out there because a lot of these issue documentaries do that's another aspect of them is they have the throw in some stories. So how do you feel this? I feel like those can go either way. Like they can either really bring the point home or they can be like overly melodramatic and crappy. So where's this fall on the melodrama scale? Do you think it was well done, those little stories, or was it melodrama?
no, I would put it in the melodrama side on this one, where, yeah, I mean, the way they did it, you could tell it was more than following their story. They cut and chose pieces that was to like drive their point home when they needed it. Like, look what these people are doing to these children. You know what I mean? As opposed to just saying like, here's the story of this child. Um,
Yeah, I agree, and I felt bad a little bit a couple times for the parents where they like would show like the parent being like, oh yeah, totally trying to like do whatever we can to help these kids, and then like they showed that like over them, like giving the kid some pizza or whatever, whatever the case may be. So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah. And again, I mean, that's obviously like, it wasn't just the children, but the adults that they just like, had no idea what healthy eating was like and a healthy lifestyle. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess I like this documentary a lot because there are a lot of points that I saw and I was like, oh yeah, these are great points and things that we need to really kind of make the general public more aware of. Like I love exercise. I like to exercise and I like to stay fit and things like that. But I think like the mass majority of people totally don't get like exercise, especially when it comes to things like weight loss. Like, and they throw out some stats in there. I wrote one of them down. It was like, okay, yeah, if you drink one Coke, to burn off a Coke, the calories in one can of Coke, and this is like even just the 150 calories, basically, not even getting into the sugar aspect of it or anything. You'd have to do 1 hour and 15 minutes of biking. And like that's where people don't like get like, I mean, that the one girl that they focus on, she's like, yeah, I've been exercising a ton and I've been, really like trying to like lose the weight and eating healthier and stuff like that. But it's like, she's swimming for, she's swimming 4 days a week, which is probably like 30 minutes per swim session, maybe an hour. And that stuff is going to, is great. It's great for her body and her muscles. And it does tons of wonderful things for you. Exercise totally does. I'm a big advocate of exercise, but it's not going to, it's going to burn, especially like if you're going a medium to lower pace, a nominal amount of calories where it will definitely do good and you'll lose weight. If you keep it up for a year or two, you'll gradually lose some weight, burning, I mean, a pound is 3,500 calories. If you're swimming an hour a day, 4 days a week, you're probably burning something like, 400 calories a week. So over the course of a year, you'll lose a few pounds,
right.
So I mean, I think that's what people don't get. They're like, they do some kind of like, they walk their dog every morning for 40 minutes, 4 days a week. And all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, I'm doing all this exercise and I'm not losing any weight. It's like, no, you're not. Because that's not, that is if you get done and you're thirsty and you drink a Coke, then boom, you just lost ground.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, I agree. I have a good example is I know some people in my workplace who are like who recently decided like they were going to go on like during their 2 15-minute breaks or whatever they're going to go for a walk during those 2 15-minute breaks. And definitely didn't last too long because they were like got frustrated quick and were like, oh, I'm just not doing anything. So yeah. Good
Right.
point.
And that's the killer too, is like people need instant results, especially with like exercise. Like if you're working out really hard for 2 weeks and you don't see any results, which you're probably not going to see any results, then people just get all mad and they're like, well, I exercised really hard, didn't do anything. So
Right. Indeed. Total different topic here, just switching tracks totally
yeah.
here, but so I looked at this movie on Internet Movie Database, and strangely, guess who gets top billing? First cast person. Any guesses? Who do you think would be the first person who gets first cast billing in this
Oprah
movie?
Winfrey.
You're right.
That's it. Who else was in that movie? I don't even remember.
I was like, oh, was she even in it?
She had
Like,
one line, and she wasn't in it. It was
it's like a clip
footage
from her
from
show
her
or
on her
something,
show.
right?
Yeah,
I was like, what is it?
I too noticed that on IMDb. So
Yeah, I figured you weren't just like a super awesome guy.
some pretty good guessing.
Yeah. Um, how about Clinton? How do you feel about his contribution?
I like Clinton. I hated him when I was in high school and he was elected because my
Me too.
parents were really, you know, right wing, and so I was at that age. And the older I get, the more I like that dude.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, because he kind of admitted fault. He was like, yeah, we dropped the ball on that one. Should have. We didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even really realize the gravity of the situation, and and it was funny too because like it's so funny to like I can't imagine seeing the world through the eyes of a politician, especially like a high level one like president, where everything is an issue. Like where you've got should because he was like, I don't feel that's a very good use of corn to make high fructose corn syrup, which means he's like thinking it should be used for ethanol because he's balancing the sugar industry versus the gasoline
All right.
industry. And he's also trying to, then you have a million like specialty interests, like, do transgendered individuals get the kind of rights they should have in the world? It's like, anyway, I can't imagine just trying to think and perceive the world in a way where you have so many issues going on simultaneously, but
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
yeah, that's interesting. I wonder. It's totally off topic from the documentary, I guess,
It
but I
is.
wonder what the Deborah Wood presidential like skill would be like, because I'm sure you have people just all day coming at you with all kinds of different issues. And I don't even know what talent or what trait that is that would make you a good president. But anyway,
No.
I'm
Yeah.
also curious, how how the politics of getting people to be in documentaries works. Like, I'm sure it's like who you know and stuff. I'm sure that the makers of this documentary that had some in or whatever. Katie Couric had some in or something.
Yeah, well, Katie Couric was the executive producer, so I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah, that I'm sure like every documentary would love to. I'm sure Clinton gets approached for like a documentary a day or something like that. So interesting
yeah,
to think about how people get the people they interview.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure like in this case, obviously Katie Couric had met Clinton prior, and Clinton wasn't like who when he
Right.
got the call. He's like, oh, okay, it's Katie Couric. It's got to be legit. And then plus, it's something that she was like, do you want to go on and talk about childhood obesity? Plus, also like, here's a big thing that like if they also list the people that declined interviews at the end of the documentary. On this one, they did. One of whom was Michelle Obama. And I'm sure the reason you get Clinton and not Michelle Obama is because he is not in politics at the moment. He
Right.
can say stuff like, "Oh yeah, my administration dropped the ball on that. We screwed up. We didn't realize the weight of the problem." He couldn't have said that when he was in office. His answer would have been something like, "Hey, we're doing X, Y, and Z to help school lunch programs. We're also doing these 15 other things which are, equally important and job economic growth." And you'd have got some crappy answer like that. When if she would have interviewed Michelle Obama, she would have had like 6 talking points that she would have deflected every, question to, and never really said anything. So, which sucks, especially that was one depressing part of the documentary was they showed Michelle Obama in her Let's Move campaign, which hits this topic exactly. And she was 100% on point when she, when her husband got into office and she became first lady. She was like, yeah, we need to do massive changes. We need to do them to the food industry. We need to change our dietary habits. She was really hitting home. Like she was really
Right.
like knew what needed to be done and was going after it. And then all of a sudden she wasn't. And
Man.
Yeah, that sucks. And I mean, like, no fault to her. I mean, she obviously wanted to do the right thing. She came in guns blazing. I'm going to do the right thing. And then I'm sure through an immense amount of political pressure from forces unseen, unknown to us, she had to change her tactic and just bow down to the food industry. And
Right.
bummer.
Um, so yeah, that brings up an interesting. So I read this review of this on RogerEbert.com, and I should have made note of who the author is. I'm sorry, it's not of this review, but basically they're getting in tearing into the movie a little bit for the reason of like kind of what you were saying about the it's just really basically depressing about like all the systematic problems and they're basically saying, yeah, this movie is like, yeah, it's just focusing on sugar and stuff like that, but like the stuff it's bringing up is like way huger than that, and it's just it's like it shows such a corrupt system that like why should we even believe this documentary, because this documentary is part of that corrupt system. Why should we believe Katie Couric and her over like anyone else, the picture it paints is so corrupt that it's like just like depressing and makes you want to be like, oh, everything's terrible,
Right.
including the makers of this documentary.
Right. Well, I mean, like, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I mean, certainly it does paint a really sad picture for reasons like that. And we've seen this in quite a few of the documentaries we've covered, is that the corporate influence over the United States government system is extremely powerful. That
Right.
when I mean, politicians are just bending to the will of corporate America, which is kind of crappy. But sorry, I was going to go with I want to talk about too, like the other thing that drives me crazy on films like this is that also takes away from like Katie Couric and like it was such a one-sided hit. So like most of this documentary focuses on sugar and sugar being added to everything in America and our gross overconsumption of sugar, which leads to obesity. And I think that there were some points in the film that really made me believe that, but I wish they would cover the counterpoints or at least acknowledge them. Because like I have thoughts where this kind of started in the 1970s. Like here's a big difference from the 1970s to today is everybody that worked in the 1970s, or a much higher percentage of the American population did something physical. I mean, like talk about like exercise. Even if you're in an assembly line and your job is to pick up some stupid little piece of metal and put it over to the next line and then walk back and put it up, that's not burning many calories. But when you're doing it for 40, 50 hours a week, I mean, if anybody said that to you, like, hey, yeah, I worked out this week for 50 hours, you would be like, what?
Right.
That is insane. But that was what everyone was just doing. That was blue collar work. That's what you did. You physically worked for that much time. And like kids too, I mean, like, and I'm, like, I think that's part of the issue that we've seen over the last, 30, 40 years is that life in general is just less physically demanding. But I'd like to see some counterpoints like that. Like, hey, maybe the 100% sole problem is not sugar. I mean, and maybe it is, but at least like throw out some other ideas and be like, this is why those are wrong. And maybe we use exactly as many calories at work typing, but I highly doubt it. And and maybe that's just such a small part of the equation, it doesn't matter. But address it. There are a couple other thoughts I had on that where I was like, oh yeah, you should really address some more of this just to prove that okay, if it's just sugar, which I believe sugar is a problem. Like this documentary convinced me of it. Like because I didn't realize like one thing that really, 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 really like is mind blowing to me is that sugar doesn't get a percentage. And I've noticed it before and I've always been curious about it and I guess not curious enough to really do the research. But that, you see the percent daily value of everything on every ingredient in anything you eat except sugar. It's just listed. And it's because pretty much the real reason is because like a can of Coke would be whatever, 300%.
Right.
And why can't we put that on a can of Coke? That would change. I mean, like that is information we should have. I mean, if we know how much cholesterol is in something, totally like seeing that number would, that would change your thought process. If you're like, oh, let's see, I'm drinking this can of Coke. Oh, it's 336% of my daily value of sugar. And that's about what it would be. You'd be like,
Yep.
oh my God, I can't drink this. That's horrible. I can't do it. But
Yeah,
we just,
there's no real valid reason not to not to do that.
well, yeah, the valid reason is because the American Beverage Association said don't do that, and we have a shitload of money, and you can't. That's the reason. Like that pisses me off. I mean, I was really like, oh my God,
Yeah,
that's
I've been playing the video game Skyrim the last couple weeks, and one interesting thing in that game is so like you're always trying to get people to do stuff, and a lot of times one of the options is you can bribe the people. So maybe think of that during this documentary because there's always like you're always like let me into this castle guard, and the guard's like get out of here, and then you're like how about now? And you give him $250, and then he's like have a nice day, sir. So I expect that's how the conversation went with the percentage of the of the sugar.
yeah, it had to. I mean, yeah, it was I don't see how else it could go. We're like, because that was and it was originally laid out by the World Health Organization that came up with the the percent daily value of sugar that was acceptable. Which I mean, their job is to promote health. That's it. There's no hidden
Right.
agenda with those guys. That's their job. And when they came out with the report, the United States flat out, through pressure, through American Beverage Association, sugar industry, and all that stuff, like nope, erase that, get rid of that, and then we're not going to add the percentage. It's like, oh,
Oh
way
man.
to protect the American public.
Yeah. That's gotta be frustrating when you're like hired to do a job and that job is to, watch the world health. And then you try to do that job and then they're like, wait, you're doing too good of a job at that thing that we asked you to do. So let's roll it back a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Frustrating.
that's got to just make you want to throw in the towel. Be like, oh, whatever. Be like, hey, instead of me doing all that work and research next time, why don't you just tell me what to put down? I'll give you a fill in the blank, you fill it in. I'll just call you, and I'll save a lot of time and energy.
Right. Um, one thing, and it's kind of pretty minor in the documentary, but it did make me think is the whole part where they're like comparing the like tobacco industry and the sugar industry, and like they're showing the clips of the tobacco people before Congress being like, oh yeah, there's no evidence that smoking causes cancer and all this stuff. And then they had that talking head guy who's like, yeah, they're lying through their teeth and they're super evil and all this stuff. And I was thinking, and I was like, man, are those people individually really evil? And I think my opinion is they're probably not personally evil, although what they're doing is evil. I think that it's probably one of those things where you're like, man, if I really believed that smoking causes cancer, then I'd have to be a real asshole to keep working at this corporation. But also, I like my job, and it's probably one of those rationalization things where you like kind of talk yourself into being like, well, maybe all the evidence isn't there. You know what I mean?
Really,
Um,
I'm really curious about it actually because I've thought about this a lot too. And there are a lot of great examples during this documentary of people like you can tell that are lying or I don't know whatever rationalizing or whatever because like they had the guy from the American Food and Beverage
right,
lobby head and he was just like they were like yeah is or is Coke and sugar drinks bad for you? And he was basically like, well, everyone needs calories and they need liquids, so you can drink it from Coke, and then that's part of nutrition. That's healthy, right? And it's like, wait, you're lying. I mean, the guy's not an idiot. I mean, he was
right,
wearing his clothes, and I assume he put them on himself. If you can do those things, you know that that is not nutritious. That's bad for you.
right,
And he's sitting in front of Congress, and it's not like he's making that argument to a buddy that doesn't matter. I mean, that's
right.
literally going to influence millions of Americans' lives and futures. I mean, it's going to play a role. Is that guy evil? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. I think the actions are evil, yes, but I don't think that I don't think his mindset is like, oh man, I'm gonna pull one over on these guys, and then we're gonna keep making those sweet, sweet checks. I think it's probably more like, okay, well, like I got to put the best spin on it I can. I'm working from the inside, we're gonna help like make these incremental changes and help things, but we can't do it if we, I'm sure there's like so much rationalization that's going on, and that I don't think in his own mind he's just like, man, this is some sweet lies I'm telling right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I get it, and I can kind of see that point. On the other hand, but I mean, how far can you take it? Can you say like say you're a hitman for the mob. You're like, well, I mean, like, hey, I'm it's the one thing I do really well, and these guys are going to get hit anyway, and they might suffer if I don't do it, but I know I'm going to do a headshot. So,
Yeah,
and
I
I
do.
got to,
I do think that. Like, remember that guy, that Whitey documentary? He was like, "Hey,
yeah,
man, the guy was hanging out with someone who's a squealer. So, like, what do you expect, man?"
right, but that is evil.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying the actions aren't evil. I guess I'm saying that in their own mind, I mean, everyone's the hero of their own story. You know what I mean?
All right, I'll give you that. Sorry, we're getting pretty far off topic, but
No,
I'll give you that.
it was a good diversion.
It was, yeah. Okay, hey,
Um,
here's a question for you on this, because I'm going to bring one up, as I've said a couple times, and maybe that's why I like this documentary so much, because there were a couple facts and statistics and things they brought up that really did like hit home with me, where I was like, this is pretty amazing. Did you have any of those when you were watching this?
um, Well, I can't think of any like specific moments, but I think they did do a really good job of like building their case, and like cumulatively, I think I did like most of the little points that they brought up. I felt like was stuff that I'd thought about, but the way they added it all together was maybe into the big picture. I don't think I'd considered the big picture quite the way that they presented it. I can't think of like really any really small little um, wow kind of moments, I guess. Um,
All
how
right.
about you?
Well, I'll throw one out in addition to what all the other ones have said, but and this is probably like the most profound one. They throw out the statistic that in cases of type 2 diabetes in adolescents in 1980 in America was zero, none. There were no cases of type 2 diabetes in adolescents. In 2010, there were 57,638. And that was like the one where I was like, well, if they're right or wrong, about what the cause is, we are literally building a problem. I mean, there's
Right.
no problem there. If you go back in time to 1980 and you're like, is there a problem with adolescent diabetes? You'd be like, what the hell is that? That doesn't even exist. Is that like is there some weird case of it out there? Is there some genetic thing going on? But you wouldn't even understand it. And now that exists. So I mean, we're literally going in the wrong direction on this. And I think that right there is enough proof to be like, 57,000 cases isn't like, a huge percentage of American children, but it's certainly not a anomaly. You know what I mean? You can't just be like, that's a statistical blip. I mean, it's been gradually increasing to that point where you're like, okay, well, we pretty sure we can, figure out where this is heading. If we keep doing exactly what we're doing, we need to find the problem and change direction in that area. And then through the rest of the documentary, I kind of like, you know, I think that it's their case is pretty strong that the massive amount of additional sugar that we're consuming as Americans is probably a root cause.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess one kind of like aha big moment, I guess, was the whole school lunch thing, and like the whole just the idea that, I mean, it's totally common sense, but I guess I never really thought about it 100% that, you know, obviously if you give kids healthy choices and not healthy choices, they're probably gonna pick the not healthy choices for the most part because they're kids. Uh, so yeah, because I've thought about that before with my daughter's school lunch and stuff like that. They always like provide healthy options, and I'm always like, oh, that's good enough. But they also always have other things. Like I think you can get like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich like any day you want or whatever, stuff like that. So that was interesting and made me think about. I should probably look into the school and lunch program at my daughter's school a little better.
Right. Yeah, and then there's like something I learned because I definitely grew up in not liking vegetables, as probably most children didn't.
All right.
And then I did one year, whatever, as a personal challenge, more or less, I went vegan for a year, which was challenging because at the time I still really didn't like vegetables, but I gave it a shot. And one thing I've realized too is that we're horrible at preparing, fruits and vegetables, and it can be done really well, which I learned over the course of that year. Where it was like, oh, let's make this stuff edible, and there's a lot of people out there that have good, like when I was a kid growing up, we would boil our vegetables all the time, like throw some broccoli in a pot of boiling water and then serve it. And I mean, that is just so ridiculous. That is exactly the same as taking a slab of a handful of hamburger meat and throwing it in a boiling kettle of water and then serving it to your guests. Everyone would be like, "This is disgusting." So it's not really a matter that hamburger is good. It's just that we know how to prepare it correctly. I mean,
Right.
asparagus is amazing if prepared correctly, but if you throw it in a pot of boiling water and then throw it on a plate, it's gross.
Nice.
um,
Fair point. Fair point.
so yeah, so I mean, like I think that kids wouldn't necessarily make bad food choices. We don't need to give them the crap choice. That's an easy fix. Of course, if you give them essentially a plate full of sugar, that tastes good. But if you gave them a plate full of really well prepared, healthy options, those would taste good too. Um, and then yeah, get rid of the crappy choices. And especially like I guess getting rid of soft drinks would be a huge step in the
Yeah.
right direction. And
Yeah. Screw soft
yeah,
drinks.
screw them. Anybody out there listening, just don't ever buy a soft drink again.
Yeah.
I'm done.
If you see somebody drinking a soft drink, just knock it out of their head
That's it. You slap it down on the
and
ground.
then just be like, "You're welcome."
That's it,
And
and
then
walk
walk away.
away. We all know what to do
Disclaimer,
now.
disclaimer, you might get beat up, but feel free.
But they'll thank you later.
Yes. Maybe. Cool. Any other thoughts? I think we got through everything on my list that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I want to throw out the other like thing that I was like, wow, it's really crazy is when they did the side by side comparison of the healthy option foods versus non-healthy, and they just threw out a couple, and they probably did find the very worst ones or whatever. But I would I'm sure they're all kind of similar. Where like when you're trying to quote unquote eat healthy and you go through the supermarket and you're like, well, here's Oreos and here's reduced fat Oreos.
All right.
And and when you're like, oh, I want to eat a little healthy, I'm going to get the reduced fat Oreos, and it's the exact same thing. It's like 10 calories less, and this is the beauty of processed food is and it's formulated, and you can change the formula any way you want. It's like, oh, it's 10 calories less. They were able to put reduced fat, and it's got one less gram of fat, but then it also has an equal amount of sugar and an equal amount of everything else. Basically, the exact same thing. There's no real benefit from taking the healthy choice, and I think that we should I don't know, just eliminate that marketing campaign should not be legal to say, because I mean, anytime anybody buys it, they're thinking like, I am making the better healthy choice. But
Right.
really not. I mean, there's little or nothing gained there. It's really just a trick, and we already have nutritional labels. So if anybody's health conscious and wants to know, you got to flip over the back and look at it for 2 seconds, and you look side by side. You're like, oh, no, okay. Well, now I understand that I'm getting virtually nothing for this. But when you have a giant label on the front that says this is healthier, it doesn't disclaim, but in a statistically irrelevant way. I mean, that's not on there right underneath the label. I think that's super harmful, especially when you saw especially when I was watching the families that focused on in this documentary where they bought that. They were just like, oh, I'm buying the healthy choice. I'm buying the healthy food. But really, they were just getting tricked.
All right.
And that,
Corporations.
yeah. And I mean, yeah. And I mean, it's all, I mean, I'm torn about it too. Cause I was my other thought on this too was, although they did say that, and I don't know, they didn't provide their mathematical formula to say how they got there, but they were like, yeah, in 2045 or something like that, 95% of adults in America or people in America will be obese. And they throw out some crazy stats like that at the end. But one thing I'd like to know now is so, I mean, right now there's a lot of healthy people in America, people that are, of a normal weight and then also healthy, not just because I mean, they kind of cover the skinny, sick, but healthy people in America, and it exists. We're living in the same society as everyone else. You know what I mean? We don't. When I go to when I go to Best Buy and there's like 8 million candy bars at the checkout line, that's the same playing field as everyone else. So I mean, is there?
We're gonna hunt you healthy bitches down and be like, no way, man, you're dead.
Right, but I mean, what's the difference? I mean, should we focus on that to see what makes that possible? What is the difference of those that last 30% of Americans out there right now that are like living in this society and live healthy, because I mean, you got to say it's an even playing field. We all live in the same society. We'll go to the same stores.
Right.
I mean, roughly. What's the difference? Is it education? Is it, just chance? Is it whatever? I mean, there's got to be some kind of rationale. I want to find that too to help solve the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of people researching that kind of stuff. I know. I mean, economic status is definitely one of the factors.
Right. I actually looked that up after watching this, which there wasn't. I was kind of disappointed on the lack of solid studies that had been done on it, but to find out, like, are rich people healthy and skinny? Are poor people, obese? And the answer is somewhat yes, although that gap is closing every year. So every year that gap gets less and less, where basically the upper class is getting more and more obese and kind of catching up, if you will, to the same health
Right.
issues as the lower class. But I mean, my thought, especially watching this in the beginning, was like education has to be the factor. Where if you're fighting a losing battle, if you just have no idea what's healthy for you and what's not, I mean, because
Yep.
they were fighting the battle. They were like, I'm being healthy. I'm going to try and lose weight. I'm going to do all these things. And they were like, oh yeah, well, you could tell they had no idea what exercise did for them. They had no idea what a whole food was, what the difference, how much sugar they were ingesting, how much, what a processed food was. You could tell those were things they'd never thought about. They had no idea. So I would think education's a huge factor.
Yeah.
And is it the government's problem? That's my always other thought. Because I mean, like they do bring up the political thing. They had good old Sarah Palin on there drinking a big gulp, saying like, is it the government's responsibility to, should they tell your kids what to eat or the parents? And I mean, that like simple, like bullet point line is a huge chunk of why nothing ever happens.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, the answer is hell no. You can't. The government can't tell my kids what to eat. They're my kids.
Right.
But you got to, obviously, if you think a little bit more, it gets a little more gray and complicated.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's easy to convince people very quickly and with a knee-jerk reaction. And yeah.
Right. So what do we? Yeah. Anyway, I guess we don't have to solve the problem. We just have to review the documentary. But
yeah, I don't know. Like part of it is too that like I don't know. Like I'm watching all these issue documentaries. I always feel like, man, I don't have the emotional fortitude to care so deeply about all these issues. So I think each person you gotta like pick one or two things that you're gonna like really be upset about and like care about or whatever. Um, so yeah, and maybe that's part of the problem. Is like the smart people who can fix things. Like they've got so many things to fix. Maybe we just need the next president needs to be like, all right, we're doing 4 years. Everyone else put that other stuff down. Environment, understand, super important. Not for the next 4 years. The next 4 years, we're focusing on this one issue, and we're gonna work on this.
yeah, you know what we need, and like I've always thrown out like a bunch of theories of what could make politicians better or whatever. But we need a president slash followed up by a Congress that simultaneously all get together and like, who's not getting elected in next term? Us. You know what? Yeah, next time we're like, hey, we're gonna fight the sugar industry and like put, the percentage daily value of sugar on labels. When the sugar industry comes in and they're like, yeah, you want to see $400 million in marketing or in campaign money next year, you better not vote for that. And they'd be like, don't worry about it. I'm out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You win. I mean, I can't do this and beat you. You're going to get me out of office one way or the other, but I'm going to do some awesome stuff on here. You need some people with that mentality where they're like, oh yeah, yeah, this political suicide. Absolutely. Done. Got it. But I'm going to do it, and it's going to be awesome. And like 20 years later, people are going to be like, that guy was amazing. He did so much amazing stuff for, our society as a whole. He didn't get reelected, but, he did kick some ass.
And maybe we need a king. A king. The monarchy
No,
system has its flaws, but
no, I mean, like my big theory on like politicians, like is, when you get elected to, and here's I'll throw this out. Anyone can use this. Somebody out there can jump on this politically and push it on the Tea Party or something. But uh, all we should do is have, every member of the House and Senate and gets elected for, like, say, 12-year term or something like that. They can't get reelected. There's no reelections. After you get done, while you're serving, you can make a fixed amount of money per year, like, say, $250,000. That puts you in the top 1%. When you finish your term, for the rest of your life, you get a stipend of $250,000 a year, and you can make no more money. That is all the money you can make. If you want to do other stuff, you can do it. But you are capped out at $250 a year. If you write a book and it sells 100 million copies, you get $250,000 that year. You're literally dedicating yourself to public service, and that way, no one has influence on you. When somebody comes in and they're like, when you're serving your 12-year term, and Lockheed Martin comes in, they're like, hey, you boost up, our missile program on this bill, then you get, this huge bonus at the end, and we'll hire you on and set you up for life. And they can be like, well, no, that doesn't help me. And then people would actually do what they thought was right for society in large. It would, because I don't fault people for, if people were coming up to me every day and being like, hey, if you do this for us, we're going to give you $2 million later. I would probably be like, okay. Nobody has, like, the moral fortitude to turn that down for years on end, especially when it's a complicated system anyway.
Right.
So there you go. So that solves the American political problem of corporate greed.
The monkey wrench I'll throw into your plan is that I think it may attract, like, the exact wrong people to politics, like, because it would attract people who would be like, oh, sweet, I get to work for 12 years, and then I get that money for the rest of my life. Cool. It doesn't matter what I do while I'm there. I'm gonna get that money. Yeah, that sounds really great. As opposed to, like, the really, like, smart, ambitious people who are like, I don't want to cap myself out at that money. I'm gonna go work in the private sector where I can
right. But I think there's a third class of money, and third class of person, and this is the type that, in my theory, it would attract, and that would be people that legitimately wanted to do something for society. Because I think right now you get that really smart, ambitious person. But I think anyone, in order to make it as a politician in the United States today, your number one goal has to be to make it as a politician in the United States today. You can give two shits about public service. You know what I mean? You don't have to care about that at all. All you have to care about is whatever it takes to get elected and then to stay in power. And I think that there's a certain kind of person that it takes to do that. And those are the people that are in office, because that's exactly what it takes. But I think there are people, like, that legitimately care. I think there's a lot of people out there that legitimately would like to make society better, and they would like to serve, for the greater good of the United States and mankind and all that. And I think those people are out there, and it's almost impossible for them to get in those positions, because in order to get in those positions, you need to have the mentality of super aggressive, in it for yourself. That's the game as it's played right now. That's the design we set up. So I think without changing that, we'll never get out.
Right. Yeah, maybe. I feel like it'd be a lot of, like, super rich people who are like, ah, man, my son's kind of an idiot. What are we going to do with this guy? And, like, well, we could just get him elected one time, and then then we don't have to worry about him anymore for the rest of his life. It's just fine.
Yeah, maybe. But those people
get him elected.
I don't know. I think you underestimate the rich. Like, I know a couple now. Rich kids, or not, kids that come from real wealth. And they don't do anything. And their parents don't need them to do anything. You know what I mean? Right. Like, they need a house, they just get a house. There's no. I mean, it's hard for us to understand, because that seems like a lot of money.
Right.
People that have grown up poor and worked for it. But yeah, I think there's a whole, like, that class of people. It's $250,000 a year. It's a drop in the bucket. Who gives a crap? They made,
right.
That wouldn't be worth getting them elected.
Yeah. I was thinking more from the aspect of, like, my son's an embarrassment. Let's just get him a senator title, and then we could say he's, like, respectable.
Yeah.
Hey, but by the way, Jonathan, I must say I'm very proud of you for allowing us to be so off topic. Good. Well done.
Thank you. Yes, thanks. I did notice that was like I did listen last week. I was like, oh, I won't be a taskmaster this week. I'm all over the place.
No, you're not a taskmaster.
All right.
All right, what are you gonna give this bad boy? How many stars?
Out of five, I'm gonna give it a four. I liked it.
All right, I'll give it a I give it I think a 3.5. I think that's what I gave Countdown to Zero, and this is like pretty much that
Same thing.
same kind of level to me.
I thought it was a step up or two from Countdown to Zero, but that's just me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, you ready for our choices for next time?
Let's hear them.
All right, our theme is 2014 Film Festival award winners, I guess.
Okay.
So these are all three documentaries that won big awards. The first one is The Overnighters. I'll just read the description. This documentary follows North Dakota pastor Jay Reinke as he tries to help the unemployed men drawn to the state's booming shale oil industry. The director won the special jury prize at the 2014 Sundance for this acclaimed documentary. So that's number one, The Overnighters. Number two is Point and Shoot. Searching for adventure and self-discovery, an American embarks on a motorcycle journey through the Middle East and joins the freedom fighters in Libya. This won the best. This won the best documentary at Tribeca Film Festival. So it's Point and Shoot, and the final choice is Rich Hill. Two filmmaker cousins return to their decaying hometown of Rich Hill, Missouri, to film this affecting documentary about the lives of three local boys. One of last year's most critically acclaimed documentaries, Rich Hill won the award for U.S. Grand Jury Prize at the 2014 Sundance Film Festival. So there you go. So we got The Overnighters, which is about the pastor dude helping the unemployed oil guys. Point and Shoot about the American going motorcycling across the Middle East and joining the freedom fighters, or Rich Hill about filmmakers returning to their decaying Missouri town.
Wow. Well, yeah, those all sound awesome. I'm totally intrigued by each one of those. Darn it, normally there's at least one that I throw out.
Right.
Huh. Yeah, let's see. All right, let me break them down. Let's see. I'm going to cross out The Overnighters.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to go with Point and Shoot just because that seems like a movie, not a documentary.
All right. All right.
So there you go.
Point and Shoot it is. So that is on Netflix. You can watch it and let us know what you think. We will be back next time. In the meantime, subscribe on iTunes. Leave us a review if you want to. That'd be great. We will talk to you later. This is PT. Keep it real.
This is Jonathan. We'll see you next week.